welcome to another episode. Now today I'm talking to you all about what it's really like to be an expat. I'm an expat here in the south of Italy. I've been living here for nearly 3 years. This is actually my first expat experience. I have spent all my life prior to this living in London in the UK. So I've learned a lot in this time and continue to learn more every single day. But of course, there are positive aspects and negative aspects, and I'm here today to talk to you about both of them in case this is something that you are considering doing for yourself or just in case you're curious. So let's get into it, shall we? Start with the negative aspects. I'm not a negative Nancy at all, but as humans, you know, we always have that inner curiosity to want to know the negative stuff first. So let's talk about that, shall we? And the first negative aspect I will say to life as an expat is the judgment. Now, there is, in my opinion, a lot of judgment when you become an expat, and sometimes it can even be from fellow expats themselves. I'm going to link above to a video that I've done about how you need to be cautious if you join online expat groups, particularly in Facebook, because often if you express an opinion or a desire to do something, whether it's to become an expat or to do something in the country you've moved to, you are often met with a lot of hostility and criticism in these groups. And it's so surprising because as fellow expats, we should all have that understanding of what life is really like as an expat, because it's not always easy, but it doesn't mean that we have the right to dampen other people's dreams and desires just because maybe we have not had the best of experiences. So, you know, from fellow expats, there is the judgment. And also, I feel people have an opinion that if you are not happy about something as an expat, why are you complaining? You chose to become an expat in the majority of cases. Why are you complaining? You know, it's almost like that attitude and mentality that a lot of people have. But the truth is, yes, you choose to become an expat, as I've said, in the majority of cases, but that doesn't take away your right or ability to be able to talk about things that you're not happy with and to try and find a resolution for things that don't serve you. Like, you know, it doesn't mean because you've chosen to become an expat, you are never able to complain again. But sometimes people will say to you, well, it was your choice, you became an expat, as if that means you have to constantly be happy. You don't. Now, I'm not a big complainer. I kind of feel complaining is wasted energy. It doesn't do anything unless you are going to match it with some form of action. So if you're going to talk about something you're not happy with and then you are going to do something about it, that's constructive. But if you are just going to sit down and be negative just for the sake of being negative, that's detrimental. It does nothing for you and it just brings down your energy and the energy of those around you. So it depends on the context of complaining, but absolutely you have a right to complain as an expat. Absolutely you have a right to feel unhappy as an expat. And you know, just because it's your choice to do that doesn't mean that you are never going to have a sad day. And that's just something very important to recognize, because I think sometimes as an expat, you feel you have to put up this facade that life is amazing every day, that you're living la dolce vita, you're on the beach, you're sipping cocktails, you're lapping up the sunshine. Yes, there's those aspects to life as an expat, depending on the country you're living in, but there are also the more difficult aspects. And so I think, you know, to be open and to actually have conversations around those is really important, and your feelings are always valid. It doesn't matter what other people have to say about it. So judgment is a big deal when you're an expat. People will have opinions about whether or not you should be speaking the language of the country that you're living in, particularly if your own mother tongue language is not spoken. I've experienced a lot of judgment from people around this living here in Italy. But a lot of that judgment comes from people who aren't even expats themselves and who don't speak any other language but Italian. So, you know, with people's judgment, it's always about taking it with a little pinch of salt, because a lot of time people want to express an opinion just for the sake of expressing an opinion. They haven't got any experience, they haven't lived a similar life, they haven't got anything of value to contribute other than just to express an opinion. It's not as if you can learn something from these people if they've never lived abroad before, if they don't even speak another language themselves. Like, let it go. Judgment is, well, it's a major factor in our society, whether it's to do with being an expat or it's to do with like the relationship you're in or the gender you are, whatever it is. Judgment is well and truly alive and kicking in our society, but it's just completely unnecessary. And so I think with any form of judgment, the best way to deal with it is just to listen, let it go. Obviously, keep what resonates, but the majority of judgment is not relevant and isn't going to help you in any way. So it's just important to let that go. So yes, prepare yourself for judgment, because whether it's through people in the country that you move to, whether it's friends or family, whether it's fellow expats, when you become an expat, you will be met with some degree of judgment. So just be aware of this. Another negative aspect to life as an expat is feeling homesick. And this is very real, especially now with the pandemic that we are still going through, even though obviously there is a bit more light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccination program, but things are not back to normal. And this is very evident because I haven't seen my parents since January of 2020 and other members of my family from before then. And I miss my family a lot. And of course, you know, we have telephone calls and we message, but of course it's not the same. Like, I want a hug for my parents. Like, you know, these are the things that cannot be replaced through a WhatsApp telephone call. But it's not so easy now, because in the UK especially, at the end of June, they were supposed to be relaxing and stopping all form of restrictions in the country and opening it up as normal. But there is a new strain of COVID and a new variant that has taken the UK by storm, to be honest. And because of this, they have now delayed the reopening fully of the country until the latter part of July. And who knows, potentially it could be delayed yet again. So I took the decision a couple of months ago that I wouldn't be returning back to the UK this summer to see my family. As difficult as it was, I was in a very tender place of feeling very homesick and feeling a little bit trapped as well. And these are feelings that I know are shared by other expats. I've seen people's Instagram stories talking about this, especially now, because when you become an expat, you always know that there is a train or a plane that you can take back to your home country if it all gets a bit too much, or if you miss something about it, you can always go back. But this pandemic has kind of made that tricky to impossible, depending on the country you're traveling to. And that makes you feel like you are stuck in the country that you're in. And I love it here in Italy. By far, living here is one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. But as I've mentioned, a few months prior to this video, I was feeling like, oh my goodness, I just want to go home and see my family. Why is it so difficult? And, you know, it was only when I had took the time to accept the situation as it is and start to look for the gratitude that I have in this moment and how I live in such a beautiful country and that everybody I know stays well, because let's face it, that's the most important thing. When I got to that place of acceptance, I felt so much better. But homesickness is a big deal, and I've done a video on this, I'll link it above, where I share some more tips on how to beat homesickness if this is something that you're struggling with, especially now with this pandemic, because it's not so easy to get on a plane and go back to your country if your country has restrictions or quarantine periods or whatever else it may be. So, and also not even that, but you might have your own personal fears about traveling. Like, I don't know personally if I feel ready to go on a plane yet, and I'm fully vaccinated. So, you know, everybody has their own personal issues around it, but I think homesickness is a big deal, and you are allowed to feel homesick. As I've mentioned before in the judgment, You are allowed to feel homesick. Just because you've chosen to become an expat does not invalidate any of your feelings. You are allowed to feel homesick. But my best tip to overcome that is to just feel gratitude in the present moment. Look for the little things that make you smile. Look for the reasons why you moved to the country you're in, because where we place our attention in life is where our energy flows. If we are constantly placing our attention on the fact that we're not able to go back and see our families, our attention is placed on that, our energy is focused on that, and we keep reminding ourselves and seeing evidence of the fact that we are stuck, in inverted commas, in the country we're living in. And this is how you can very quickly fall down the rabbit hole into a very sad place. So just look for the gratitude and look for the positives in the situation, and be grateful that we have technology to even still physically see, even though we can't touch, our family members at this time through video calls or Skype or whatever else. So, you know, homesickness is a big deal as an expat. It's a big negative aspect. So something that you need to prepare yourself for, because it's not just homesickness for people, but also it could be for other aspects of your old life. Food or activities, or, you know, the quality or way of life that you're used to. You can feel homesick for many different aspects, and especially, and I will say this, if you don't speak the language of the country you're in, the simple pleasures of going into a bookshop to choose a book or watching television, suddenly you feel very homesick because you want to be able to turn on the TV and immediately understand what you're watching. You want to go into a bookshop and pick something up and immediately be able to read it. So, you know, there are different aspects to homesickness. It's not just for people. It can be for objects, things, places, all of this. But I think it's about finding your own coping strategy, but it is something to be aware of if you're considering becoming an expat. Another negative aspect of life as an expat is how isolating it can feel. Now, I feel that this is the case, especially if you move on your own, and especially if you don't know anyone or many people in the country that you are moving to. So obviously, if you move with your family, or you have family or friends in the country you're moving to, this you don't feel quite as much. But if you move by yourself and you are, you know, adapting to a new culture, a new way of life, trying to meet people, maybe you don't have the language to be able to communicate easily, it can be very isolating. And so this is something to prepare yourself for. And the way that you can prepare yourself for it, if you are in this situation, is to try to connect with people that are in your area. Begin with expats. So really, I spent, and I've spoken about this in many different videos on my channel. I'm going to link above to a playlist of some of my most popular videos, and I talk about this in pretty much all of them. I spent the first year and a half of life here in Italy like an absolute mute. I didn't really speak. I didn't really communicate my personality. It was like the most isolating experience. And, you know, I knew people here. I started to make friends, and I had a boyfriend, and I still felt isolated because I couldn't express my personality. And it's only since I connected with an expat group here in Salerno that I have really come out of my shell, and I've really felt more settled and more grounded, and I've really built an independent life for myself. And this is the least isolated that I have felt since I moved here. So, you know, I believe the connection is important. It's important that you can meet locals and not just stick with expats. It is a balance, but that initial connection with other people that are in a similar situation to you can really help you and can stop you from feeling isolated, because honestly, it's not a nice place. Take it from me, like I was miserable for such a long time, and I loved living here. Like I never regretted it at all, but it was a very strange experience for me not to be able to fully communicate who I am as a person. So definitely look for ways that you can form connections either as you arrive or leading up to your arrival in the country you're moving to. And you know, a lot of these expat groups can be found through Facebook, but obviously, as I say, proceed with caution. Some people can be quite negative. Just all the advice I've given surrounding judgment, keep that in your mind when you're taking part in conversations with people. And honestly, take what resonates, because there is some goodness in these groups, even though there are also some negative aspects. So another negative aspect to life as an expat, I would say, is adapting. Now, you absolutely have to adapt to your new life. It's going to be very difficult for you, and you're going to have a very tough expat experience if you try to live your life the way you have always lived it. Forget it. Like, if you move to a new country, you are moving into a brand new experience, a brand new set of beliefs, a brand new culture, a whole different way of life, and you have to adapt and go with the flow in order to have a smooth transition and a smooth expat journey. Where expats come into a lot of difficulty is when they spend too much time focusing on what their old life was like and comparing it to their current life, or they just simply are not willing to change any aspect of the way they live their life to adapt to their surroundings. Honestly, you have to adapt to change, and it's, you know, like, when you adapt, that's how you grow and you learn more about yourself as a person, and ultimately that's how you have a much better experience, and the experience I think that you are destined to have as an expat as well, because being an expat, I'm going to talk about the positives next, is an incredibly life-changing experience. And you know, there are so many positive aspects to it that if you stay rigid and stuck in the way that you've always lived your life, you are going to miss out on, and that's a real pity. Why become an expat if you want your life to be as it was in the country you're from? You become an expat to have a new experience, so adapt and enjoy it and embrace it. That's what I say. So let's now talk then about the positive aspects, because this is the side that I like to talk about the most, because, you know, positivity is what it's all about. So what are the positive aspects of being an expat? Well, first of all, it is one of the most liberating and life-changing experiences you can possibly ever have. Like, I cannot even begin to tell you, it's on so many different levels. From the fact that you move to a new country, you create new experiences for yourself, you meet new people, you potentially might have to learn a new language, adapt to a different way of working, a different culture, a different society, a different currency maybe. There are so many new aspects to your life that you are going to experience. It is amazing. And honestly, as I've mentioned before, like, if you can learn to adapt and roll with it and go with it, even if it's very, 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 very different to what you're used to, you will honestly get the biggest reward from it, which is personal growth, which is transformation, and which is just the intense freedom that being an expat can give you. So, you know, I think it is one of the most life-changing experiences. Like, you know, consider you're going to try new food, you're going to have a different perspective on life, you're going to be surrounded by different scenery and have different experiences. It's amazing, but I think you really have to embrace everything in order to have a good expat experience. Another positive aspect to life as an expat is that you learn so much. And not only do you learn so much about life in general, about another culture, but also about yourself. Being an expat opens you up in a way that I don't know of any other experience that does. And really, if you are becoming an expat because you want to escape a certain aspect of your old life, or you're not happy with something, or you're not happy with something in your old life, please know this: you take you wherever you go. That was the biggest lesson that I learned in becoming an expat, because you might have different faces, different places, different food, different environment, but you've always got you. And so this is a very important thing to remember. When you become an expat, you will probably do the most personal growth, change and development that you have ever done in your life. Because when you live your life in a mundane way, in the same country you've always lived in, or you've spent a great deal of time in, and you're doing the same things, surrounded by the same faces and the same places, like, you don't really take the time to look at yourself and your life. But when you are put into a completely brand new situation, a brand new country, brand new faces and places and languages, listen, it forces you to, it shines the light on you as a person and who you are and what you believe and what you want from your life in, honestly, no other way that I know. So it's really important to remember that you are always going to be with you on this journey. So do the work on yourself, make those changes if it's going to give you a better life. You know, like, be open to learning more about who you are as a person and the dreams and desires that you have. Because honestly, being an expat is one of the best experiences for this. I tell you, it completely breaks you open, and it can heal you, and it can also help you to live a much healthier and happier life. And I am proof of this. So yes, that's something to consider. And also another positive aspect to life as an expat is that it may well encourage you to become bilingual and to learn a new language, particularly if your mother tongue language isn't spoken in your country. And this is a positive. Like, I'm on an Italian learning journey, as many of you know if you've been following me for some time. And, you know, it's interesting, and I'm proud of myself to now be putting together words and sentences and, you know, piano, slowly, but I'm getting there. And, you know, it's actually really wonderful to think that in this process, I'm going to become bilingual. That's an amazing quality. Not many people are bilingual. So, you know, embrace it, learn it, take something new from it. It's all personal growth, and it all ties in with like working on yourself and the development of yourself. And, you know, of course, there are other aspects that are very dependent on the country you move to, like better weather, maybe a better quality of life, maybe, you know, a better cost of living, maybe better job opportunities, whatever it is. Obviously, they are very specific and dependent on the country that you move to. But overall, being an expat is an incredibly wonderful experience. And I wanted to do this video because I think, you know, a lot of people have questions about what it's really like. And these experiences that I'm talking about, they're not just for those expats that want to move to Italy, but it could be for whatever other country you move to, because I feel like they are a common theme to life as an expat. So I hope you've enjoyed my video. If you like my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video.